All right. Welcome back to another Praxis podcast, Career Bound by Praxis. Today we're doing something a little bit different. Been thinking about some different ideas and thought this would be something really cool to put out there. So we actually reached out to the Praxis community and said, hey guys, we're going to do some live resume reviews on the podcast. We'd love to, get some volunteers. So we've got a handful of resumes here. So Mitchell, I'll turn it over to you and maybe you could say a couple things, but I'll pull this up and we could get right into it.
Yeah, hit me with it. I'm excited to do this. Haven't seen these resumes yet, but excited to do sort of the real-time feedback here. So some sort of starting points here before we even dive into these. So one thing that I want to always I think a common misconception about the job hunt in general is like so much of it hinges on your resume. It's just not true. Yeah. I think your resume is it's more likely a weapon against you than it is the thing that's going to get you the job. And that's not always true. But like, again, I'm kind of give you like the generic sort of rule of thumb here is if your resume is bad, the chances that it harms you are substantially higher than if it's just okay to good, that it's going to like differentiate you in a positive way. Yeah. So your bare minimum aim with a resume, it should be that it is error-free, it is descriptive in a way that is relevant. So the skills that you're putting on display or that you're highlighting from past experiences should be calling out the things that are relevant to the types of jobs you're applying for. It should be descriptive of actual impact that you've had to the degree possible. So like if there's actual statistics, metrics that you can call out, things that you've been responsible for, numbers that you've owned, even if it's, like an entry-level job or a hourly wage job, try to find some way to quantify, your effort. Shouldn't be typos. There shouldn't be anything glaringly silly or childish or that jumps out and makes me pause and think, that's maybe not professional. So examples being like, your email address shouldn't be, Pretty Kitty 85, or your birth date, or like, some fantasy novel name, or it should be your name, like professional name, like your name, first name, last name at, emailaddress.com or some derivative of that. Your LinkedIn profile, you should have one, depending on what types of jobs you're applying to, I suppose, but it should be, LinkedIn / your name. Like some of those things are table stakes. Like everything should be polished, and it should just not be something where errors jump out or things that would prevent me from hiring you jump out. So that's like your bare minimum aim. And then I think everything from there is the upside. It's the things that could actually move the needle. And that's where I would say you go from a good or acceptable resume to a remarkable resume. And that comes down to the quality of your experience, the quality of results that you've been responsible for in the past. So keep that in mind. Your resume, it's part of the thing, but it definitely shouldn't be the end all be all. There are countless other things that you should be doing outside of just having an acceptable to great resume that are going to maximize your likelihood to get a job. So with all of that said, without further ado, let's check out some resumes. Let's we'll do some live breakdowns here.
Let's do it. All right, we'll go in order of submissions. So first up, we got Blake's resume here with a focus. It's already geared towards, as a caveat, Mitchell hasn't seen this. I only briefly looked at it, and so it's going to be a pretty live review, and it's geared towards pivoting into sales. So that's that's kind of like that's the goal with this resume.
Got it. All right, zoom in on this thing because I can't.
Okay. How much more do you need me to zoom into? Let me see if I can go like that. It's a little blurry for some reason.
I think this is just a little bit more, and I mean it's even though it's blurry, it's still good enough for me to be able to to read it. So, all right. Starting at the top here, you said goal is to break into sales or to navigate towards sales. We've got up at the top, results-driven professional with proven track record and early startup and established business. Actively looking to utilize my skills to assist companies with their GDM strategy in both a, let's say, setter, SDR, or an account executive role. Adept at creating and executing strategic sales initiatives to drive organizational growth and impact. Strong communication and interpersonal skills contribute to fostering collaborative work environments and achieving impactful outcomes. Okay, a lot to unpack there. We're gonna kind of take this thing from top to bottom, and so the line right below Plano, Texas, and right below the profile up. Let's like break down this top section first. Okay. So, all right. Argument that you could make for or against having a picture on a profile on a resume altogether. I don't have strong opinions about this. I know that, you know, some types of environments they're not gonna want that. You know, it kind of like violates their typical ATS. You know, they don't want to be discriminating against people, or they want to like not have that kind of details, blah, 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 blah. Some people don't like to have it. I think it's really just a matter of personal preference there. And also understanding that, you know, maybe there are some organizations that don't love pictures. And so that might, you know, put you off on the wrong foot there. Typically, my counter argument to that is like, if an organization cares that much, like they're going to see your face eventually. If they care that much about a picture on your resume, probably not a place you want to work. So putting that argument on the shelf here, I think my argument against this one is the picture is huge. It takes up too much space. Overall, you want to have a resume that fits on one page, but you want to be as effective as possible with the space you use. So you don't want a ton of white space. You don't want it to be just a nonstop wall of text. You want it to look clean, professional, but you want to maximize the value of the real estate that you've got. So this picture is way too large. There's too much white space above and below the name. Generally, the like layout and format of this resume is fine. I've seen this sort of format work quite a bit. So where you've got the like name, and then you've got the sort of condensed summary of skills and information on the side, and then you've got this like stacked sort of chronological record of work experience, education, stuff like that. Like the format is fine. There's a lot of white space. That'd be sort of the first critique, in addition to like, this picture is way too large. Is there a way that maybe you can reduce that, make a little bit better use of your space by beefing up some of the descriptions lower on, and, you know, changing the word formatting? The ratio of text size in like this profile section to the picture and to his name is it's like a little bit, I don't love it. Again, these are like totally over the top like critiques. This isn't really qualitative. This is more of something on the margin that's going to, you know, improve it by 1% at best. It's not going to be something that disqualifies you, but these are, again, we're breaking this down, giving my sort of real-time feedback as ways to like enhance this. So that being said, that text is really small. I know we're kind of zoomed in here and we're looking at, I'm looking at a shared screen here, but like overall the text is too small. Is that 2 pages too, by the way? Yeah. This resume 2 pages. Yeah. So that's also an issue. Okay. So back to my point about like maximizing the use of real estate. You definitely shouldn't have a 2-page resume. Everything should fit on 1 page. You've got all this white space. You should be more effective with like condensing this down. Which brings me to sort of the profile section here. Your like sort of executive summary or objective, you know, it goes by different names here, but I think the content is okay. I'd give it a C+ right now. The reason that I would dock it is there's tons of jargon and buzzwords in it, which I don't love. You should never use abbreviations here. You know, there's an argument to be made here. If you're really targeting sales roles, the person that's going to be reading this, they're going to understand the inside baseball. But you don't want to leave the opportunity for them not understanding it and then them misinterpreting that as either a typo or misinterpreting it as you don't know what you're talking about, or you're using language that they're not necessarily familiar with, and therefore they don't really understand the value of what you're saying. So I would eliminate any type of abbreviations there. So like GDM, put go to market, SDR. SDR is probably a fine one if you're applying for roles that are literally called SDR, but it's still one. Sales development. I wouldn't use the word setter here. I wouldn't use like slash there. Zoom in a little bit more on this profile, and let's see if we can, improve this a little bit.
You want to scroll down a bit, or go?
Yeah. Okay. No, zoom in a little bit more on this profile section, and let's see if we can. All right. So I generally like what you're trying to accomplish here: results-driven professional with a proven track record in early startup and established business. One thing I don't love about this sentence is it's somewhat vague about your track record. Okay, you worked in early startups and established businesses, but in what capacity? Where were you driving results? What type of results? What were there quantifiable results? It's just a bit generic, and that's not what you want to do. Any time on your resume that you can convert generic statements into specific value statements. So, results-driven professional with a proven track record in the revenue function of early startups and established businesses, responsible for insert a metric. Responsible for growing revenue 20% year over year during a 2-year stretch. 110% of quota 6 quarters in a row. Whatever it drove.
Responsible for a ton of over $500,000 of pipeline generated, something like that is great.
Whatever it is, call out those specific metrics. Don't use vague statements. You're glossing over sort of your contribution, and your goal with the resume. Again, let's zoom back out here. Is to the extent that somebody's going to look at it all, you want to give them an excuse to, instead of spend. I think the average that goes around is like a recruiter takes about 7 seconds to look at a resume. So you want to give them an excuse to spend 30 seconds instead of 7. And so in that 7 seconds that they're scanning, they should find something that reels them in and convinces them to spend 30 seconds. And in that 30 seconds that they are breaking this down, that should reel them in to spend 2 minutes. And the more time that they're spending on this, again, you want there to be positive things, high value content that they're interacting with. But the reason that an increased time is valuable is you're making a stronger impression. Hopefully the content that you're sharing that is somewhat gripping to them, it maps directly to the profile that they have in their mind about who will be successful in this role we're trying to hire for. So that's where generic statements kill you. You want to be specific. So if you are applying to SDR roles, this is great. But what's better than this statement right now is those specific metrics, calling out, and to an extent possible, trying to pick metrics that are relevant to the role. So if you're applying to SDR roles, those metrics are a little bit different than if you're applying to AE roles. I don't love that this is a little bit on the fence about SDR or AE roles. If you want to make it a little bit better, just go blanket sales. But I think that it would be even more effective to choose SDR or choose AE, hone in on that. The metrics are going to be a little bit more different. Like AE roles, you're a little bit more advanced sales role. You're going to want to call out closing experience. You want to call out how successful you were in that capacity, your performance related to that. SDR, you want to focus more on metrics about like your ability to hammer the phones, my close to calendar rate, your daily activity metrics for like a long period of time, your pipeline generated for AEs. There's all these, there's slightly different set of metrics that are going to be more specific. And you got to keep in mind who's looking at this resume. What do they care about? That should be sort of your North Star when you're crafting that. So some obvious things that you can do here to improve this, to make it more specific. One thing here. So this is a little hack that I've really been enjoying lately, just for funsies. break out ChatGPT or some other,
Grok.
some other AI large language model tool here. Drop your resume in, ask for advice, and then drill into specific sections. So for your profile example here, Blake, I'd load up your resume to something like that and be like, hey, using all of the data points from my work experience, craft the most compelling, objective summary for my resume possible. To the extent possible, use specific metrics, things like that. If you haven't included specific metrics below, like the output of that is not going to be as successful, but
Yeah.
Create that output and then tweak it and make sure that it sounds more human. Right now, it does sound a little bit robotic because there's so many buzzwords. So, all right, we've kind of beat a dead horse there.
I will add one thing to what you were talking about with the not making it for both SDR and AE roles. Either change it to, when you said, just make it generic, just sales. You could also just make 2 resumes, like make an SDR resume, make an AE resume, because then you're like, okay, I want to keep my options open. Maybe a smaller company founding AE role is open, and then a bigger company SDR role. Just have both, and then that way you can use both and have them to your advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. You should have a resume for, should be tailored, should be specific. To the extent possible, create a resume for each individual role you're applying for and tailor everything to that specific role. Like, that seems like a lot of work, but like, you're talking about your career here.
Yeah.
You want to maximize your likelihood of having great success. Go over the top like that. So, okay, a couple other things here. Contact email looks great. LinkedIn profile. I'm a little bit, probably old school on this, where I don't think you should have hyperlinks on your resume, even if you're typically doing this in a digital format. Like, just put LinkedIn / your name. Like, that should be your LinkedIn URL anyway. It should be a short URL that's like linkedin.com/in/your name. Like, that's what it should be. And then just make instead of saying LinkedIn profile, just put the actual URL there. Don't expect people to click, but it should be spelled out. Small thing here. You got a lot of white space in the contact section as well. All right. Moving on to the next sections here.
All right, here, let's just see, look at these holistic skills, work experience. Do you want to focus on maybe work experience as a whole?
Yeah, so I want to, before I drill into this, I want to zoom in a little bit and scroll through the work experience. So, all right, we've got lead generation. All right, scroll down. All right, can keep scrolling here. Okay, can keep scrolling here. Fantastic. So, all right, one thing I want to call out here that I wanted to check here is your work experiences should be in reverse chronological order. This is a simple thing, but your current or most recent job should be top, and then it should be reverse. So your least recent job should be at the bottom. Your most recent or current should be at the top. Which, Blake, great, well done here. Let's scroll back up to the top here. So, again, we're going to talk about the white space here. You've got all these giant gaps in between sections. The font is small. There's already some things that I see are areas for improvement here. I don't think that you necessarily have to break these out with these headlines of like lead generation, but I do actually like it. I don't love that there's not a title, unless the title is lead generation. I'm like, that's a bit confusing to me. Is lead generation the title, or is it the skill that you're trying to call out here? If that's the title, I don't think it's a good title. Lead generation specialist, expert, lead generation
lead,
rep. You need to have it. It's somewhat contextual here. All right. I do like that there's a short description of what the company is. That's great. All right, here, breaking down the actual things. Immediately I see there's not metrics. You should have metrics. What were you responsible for? What was your success in this role? You're driving leads. How many leads? What percentage of leads were you feeding to the team? How was that percentage growing over time? How effective were those leads? Give me something quantifiable that gives me an idea of how successful you were in this role. You were here for 2 years. Were there any progression? Did your role change at all? So there should be something that tells me that story. Breaking down the actual bullet points here, other than the metrics things, you should have action verbs. Action verb should be the first word all the way through. I don't love that it starts with matrix reporting to the CEO. Reported to. Like it should be past tense action verbs, which he's got on the rest of them. Compiled, developed, arranged, coordinated. Great. But you should be able to scan down the resume and the first word should be past tense action verbs. No passive things. Matrix reporting to the CEO, CO, and other C level. It doesn't tell me anything about what you're doing. The next sentence is a little bit more descriptive. Responsible for implementing supporting infrastructure activities during the startup phase of the company. Okay, great. But again, very generic. What does that mean? Did you build systems? What systems? Were you Salesforce administrator? Were you building the financial infrastructure for invoicing clients, collecting payments, like quote to cash? Like what were you doing? What's the infrastructure you're talking about here? How is that relevant to the types of roles you're applying for? Like that story you're telling, you should highlight the things that are going to be specific to the roles. If you're truly in a lead generation role here, and you're applying for SDR roles, okay, an opportunity to have a lot of highly contextual past experience that directly transferable. Lead with those things. Lead with those experience and the metrics that map onto this next role. All right, we're going to skip over here to the left here while we've got this. Salesforce skills, okay. Argument to be made here whether you have skills broken out and tech stack broken out separately. Don't have a strong argument here, but about like my personal preference here, though. One thing to keep in mind is most ATSs, they're going to be scanning for words. So you do want at least the keywords present. One good piece of advice here is when you're applying to jobs, look at the job description. It's the answer to the test. What are the keywords that they're using here when they're talking about required experience in terms of years of experience, in terms of specific softwares, in terms of specific skills. So for an SDR role, they probably want cold calling is probably a keyword, or cold email, cold outreach, cold prospecting, pipeline generation, outbound motion, like tools like Salesforce, outreach, sales enablement, LinkedIn Navigator, cold emailing, email sequences. All of those different buzzwords, they're not really buzzwords. They are sort of relevant keywords for roles. So look at the job description, pull it up, don't lie here. Like I'm not trying to, suggest that you should be deceptive, but any experience that you have, use the language they're using, make sure it's in your resume. In your skills, that's an easy place to just hammer those keywords. If you have that experience, put them in there. Job descriptions typically also give you a clue of what's important in a hierarchy of order. So those requirements tend to be written where like the most important things are first. And then a lot of times they'll have like nice to haves below that, or not required, but preferred. Like if you can have most of those requirements met, like the keywords on your resume, and then you can have some of those preferred, it's already better. So this is better for two reasons. One, I said 7 seconds for a recruiter. They're going to be scanning these things quickly, but you're also up against an applicant tracking system, which are very sophisticated today. If you're sending this into the black hole of applications, a lot of those ATS systems, those applicant tracking systems already, they are using, some of them are using like generative AI, or some of them are using, they're using like keyword scanning. Basically, that's how it works. Like scans for keywords, and then sort of says yes or no. On the back end of those, you can set them up where you're automatically disqualifying candidates if they don't have things. Whether it's missing keywords, or it's certain level, like number of years of experience, or, some really crazy people have, like, do they have a bachelor's degree or not, even though that most times has no bearing on whether somebody's able to do the job or not. But, like, you are setting yourself up for failure if you're not reading the answer key to the test and then modifying your resume where you have relevant experience to call out those keywords. So when it comes to skills, that's where I'd say that is the best indicator of whether you've done well or not.
Yeah.
It's hard to just give a generic, is this good or not, without the context of the specific roles you're applying for.
And something
Salesforce, go ahead.
I was going to say something unique to sales roles too is it's going to be in your best interest to get in touch with the hiring manager, somebody on the sales team, multiple people, like if you're applying for an SDR role, you're going to want to, and there's different schools of thought. I just think that this has been successful for a lot of people is reach out to the hiring manager via email, LinkedIn. Some of them like to be cold called. Go ahead and connect with the SDR team on LinkedIn, reach out to them. What you're going to want to create a bit of a, like, I'm going to sell myself as a candidate through this process. Like, I'm going to show you that I'm already doing this. So sales is unique in that your resume is important because, like you were saying earlier, it can hurt you. It's not what I think is going to get you a sales job. I think you showing that you're like ambitious is what's really going to ultimately land you the job. But this type of stuff, like if you can make it through the ATS, it doesn't hurt. But what you're banking on anyway in a sales job is your ability to get in touch with the people on that sales team and overseeing that sales role.
Do the job before you have it. Prove that you can do the job.
Yeah.
One other point on the resume here, like your job with the resume is to not get eliminated. Like, that's how hiring systems work, is that because most roles are getting 250, 300 plus applicants, the recruiter or the person that's first in line for doing like first round of evals on open recs, like their goal is to whittle down the pipeline. It's to eliminate the pool of candidates and then leave sort of a smaller, at least hopefully higher quality pool of candidates that they're actually going to spend a little bit more time on. And then they're going to narrow that down. And there may be one or two of those sort of callings before they even set up their first call. And so you don't want to have a resume that's going to get eliminated. And the best way to do that is, again, you want to have those keywords. You want to have it contextual, relevant to the role. Definitely don't have tons of typos and it looks terrible. Like this resume looks good on the surface, but there are obvious things that you can improve. So when it comes to the skills here, you're applying to SDR roles. You have these skills listed. There's nothing about cold calling in the skills. There's nothing about cold email outreach. I don't even see the word prospecting there. You will want to pull the job descriptions, but there are some like universal terms that I would say are probably, they seem glaringly missing here. So that would be something to keep in mind here. But your answer key is the job description. So use that, evaluate your resume through the lens of the job description. All right, scroll back down here. We're going to talk about, the next work experience here, and then we'll glance at the education. Education looks like bare minimum. It's there. I would say if you're going to include education at all, detail what you got out of it. Institution, the time you went, which I don't even know you have to necessarily indicate the time you went. There's argument going back and forth about like you including a graduation year sort of ages you. I don't think it's that huge of a deal. What's more important is if you're going to list it, why was it valuable to you? Why is it valuable in the context of this role? If it's not valuable in the context of this role, why would you even include it? You're wasting valuable real estate. So like call out how that makes you a better candidate for this position. Otherwise, it's just a wasted line. And that goes for both these. So jumping back over here into the work experience, freelance, remote, not super descriptive of what you're doing there, what the actual, like if the title is independent corporate recruiter project based, I don't love that. Again, it seems like it's a part-time role. Even if it is, you don't want to devalue how somebody's interpreting that role. Project-based most likely should have a hyphen there as well. I've done project-based for corporate recruiting. It's in the first person. Don't love that. Talk a little bit about the types of clients you served, how you were effective, how your role impacted, the clients' businesses that you're working for right out of the gates. Again, these bullet points, past tense action verbs, not just generic things listed. That's which this is talking about the types of roles, which, that's possibly relevant, to the extent you're talking about having recruited for sales roles. But what I would say, my strong argument here is if you have experience as a recruiter recruiting for sales roles, it almost raises the bar of expectation for what your resume should be. And I would say this is, my hunch, my initial hunch is your resume is not as strong as I would expect it to be if you've had experience hiring for sales roles or recruiting for sales roles. Not a personal knock, just an observation about, like, this is the signal you're sending to the hiring manager. So make some of those improvements on the metrics, some of the things we've already discussed. You've already made a big substantial improvement on this resume that I think is going to increase your odds of getting noticed. This particular one, I'd rework it, add some metrics, call out how you were successful in that capacity. Or let's scroll down to the next page. There shouldn't be a next page, but we're going to look at it anyway.
This is all the same, so we really just need to focus here. Just work experience continued, and then references.
Yeah, awesome. This should all fit on one page. You definitely shouldn't have the same stuff repeated unless it's just your name and contact information. But you shouldn't have all that stuff twice. You shouldn't have a second page in general. So that problem kind of solves itself. This is pretty good. Still could beef it up with some metrics. You still want those past tense action verbs here. I do like you talk about specific things that you did. I managed email automation and data entry projects contributing to the organization's growth and impact. Okay. How did you managing those things contribute to growth and impact? To what extent did it contribute to growth and the impact? Those are the questions that are sort of immediately elicited by reading a statement like that. I like the entry point. It's a great setup, but then you kind of leave me hanging wanting more about the actual impact. So that's how I would improve those is, make it a little bit better. This is a pretty big wall of text right here. So I would try and visually break that up. One thing that I think is great too, is if you have specific metrics, is if you can highlight those. So in a wall of text like this, you can make that amount of text fine, but you've got to have some type of visual break. Again, you got to remember, people are scanning these things. So you want to lead their eye to the thing that matters. So let's just say hypothetically here, I managed email automation and data entry projects contributing to, 20% net growth, whatever it is, but then you call out that metric, you bold it and italicize it, or bold it and underline it. And now I'm scanning it and I see that specific metric. I glance at it and that's the thing that catches my eye and makes me read the full sentence, versus just scanning it. You can do a couple of things like that. References here, generally recommend having references. Things that are missing here. What's that person's title? What capacity did you work with them? Why are there somebody who should have weight if I call them? Yeah. Those are some things that I think would make that a little bit better. All right. Is that everything here?
I think so. Yeah.
All right.
And I think
Blake, overall, great first stab here. Yeah. First stab here. Would recommend making some of those improvements and really level this up.
All right. Take your pick.
Let's go to the next one.
Okay. Let's go here with Noah's.
Oh, 1 second before you even click on that. This is good. Exit out of that. Show us the names. All right. Naming conventions on the PDF file. you got to remember you're dumping this into a bin with hundreds of other people. Okay. If they're reviewing your resume in an applicant tracking system, it may not be that big of a deal because it's attached to your candidate profile, but just assume that they're literally looking through these resumes. They're downloading them and they're pulling them out, or they're looking at them. My personal preference is going over the top. Again, every interaction you have in the hiring process is an opportunity to wow somebody or to make them have no reaction, whatever. They're apathetic, they don't care, or for them to, or for it to be a slightly negative signal. So just resume, that's negative. Whose resume? I've got 100 resumes here. How am I going to find that if I'm looking for it? Here's how I would do my resume. It would be Earl, Mitchell. My last name first. Most times they're sorting by last name. The likelihood, maybe you and a different candidate have the same first name, for instance. Last name, first name, space, first name, space, hyphen, space, company name, space, hyphen, space, title. Or if you really want to take it to the next level, 2024 09 13. Okay, so you've put the date, and then you've put your name, then you put the company name and the time. Like, you've made it this. Now I'm looking at this file and I know exactly what it is. I know when. Like, it's one of those things. Again, this is such a small little thing. I'm being petty even bringing it up, but it is one of those things where it's like, wow, this person's attention to detail is impeccable. That's a positive signal versus just first name, whatever. Blake, probably the best one here. It has a date. It's missing context. But when you have the company name and the role, it makes it feel like it was personalized. You created this just for it's bespoke resume. It's not just a generic thing. So an opportunity to add that 1% margin of improvement versus, no reaction versus, in the case of just resume, an actual negative signal. So let's move on.
All righty. Here we go.
All right. So there's a lot going on here already. I don't love this resume, even without looking at the content. The thing is, like, the colors, it's a lot of colors. There's like the triangles up at the top. I do like that the headshot is smaller as a percentage of the overall page. The formatting looks off just at the high level. Like, the left margin of the page is far too close. It's like bled over. Like, if I printed this out, there's a good chance that we're going to cut off, from the N of Noah all the way down, like everything down there. It may be past the bleed. So you want the margins to fit in the page. It also feels like it's heavy on the left side. You've got all this white space on the right. I don't love that. Even without reading the content, I don't love that everything is left justified. So I actually recommend having everything justified. So your text goes from left all the way to right, and it's even. It has this balanced square look rather than having these like widows and orphans at the bottom of each sentence. Like, the paragraph bleeds over. There's different, like, your line should scan down. The line should be straight all the way down. These are simple little silly things that are not going to get you the job, but it's the difference between. I'll give you kind of a simple example. Okay. It's a difference between, let's say you're applying for a job in person, and there's two different examples of this. Even without talking to the person, even without looking at a resume, you've got two people that walk in to apply for a job in person. One of them, they haven't had a haircut in months. They're just like disheveled. They've got like a scraggly beard. They got a face tattoo, a nose ring. They, like this giant snake tattoo all the way around. They've like, their clothes are dirty. They're wrinkled. They smell like just like somebody that just came in off the streets applying to this job. That's candidate A. You haven't met them. You just see them from afar. You know they're applying. That's your first impression. Candidate B, somebody's clean shaven, fresh haircut, dressed in a well-pressed suit. They look polished. They look clean. They look well kempt. They're the way they're carrying themselves seems to, exude confidence and sort of like professionalism.
Yeah.
Without making any value judgments about those people, we're just talking about like the first impression, the first aesthetic impression. Which candidate are you probably going to have a more positive interaction with? Probably the second one, because it's not about who they are as a person at that point. It's about the level of effort that is immediately signaled. Like, this person came to play ball versus this person seemed like coming in and applying for this job was an afterthought. You want to have the signal that, like, I went over the top, I made the effort. I'll give you another specific example just like this. Let's say you have two candidates that both make a strong positive impression. One of them hands you a resume that's on like flimsy printer paper, the normal kind of printer paper. You haven't even looked at it, but you're just feeling it. And the second person gives you this like 80-pound cardstock resume paper with a watermark. The watermark is like put on the right side. And now you just, without even, let's say the hiring manager is blind and they're just feeling these two. One of them is already, it's a more serious, stronger positive impression. And the reason I bring these things up is no single one of these things is going to get you the job. It's the compounding effect of doing all of these things 10% better than all of the other candidates. It's going to differentiate yourself. But if you do all of these things remarkably well, like, instead of just being 1% better than the next person, like, compound it out. Like, maybe you're 25%, 30% better, or it's a drastic, it's a drastic gap between you and the next candidate. That's how you get the job. And so that's why I'm a little bit overly critical about all these little things. Is every single one of them is an opportunity for you to stand out, differentiate yourself in a positive way, including the margins, the spacing, the lines, the formatting, all of it. All right. Now that we've just totally eviscerated that without even looking at the content, let's. You have something you wanted to add
based on the color scheme. This is very short. I was assuming there'd be like a Proton email. It's the Proton colors. It looks like the Proton colors at the top there.
I got Halloween.
I could see that.
Orange, black, and purple.
You see, I was taking that less of an orange. If that was like a brighter orange, though, I could see why.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, if you're going to use colors, I think this is, again, another opportunity to stand out, is use the colors of the company that you're applying for.
Yeah.
Go use the color picker tool on their website, get their actual brand palette, then go change the colors on your resume to match for that. So, all right. First off, I already love the About Me section without even reading it. Like, I love the Hi, I'm Noah. So this is kind of a break from convention. Instead of this like traditional objective summary, it's very personal. It's warm, inviting, makes me want to read it. So I like that. I think the copy is strong in this next sentence too. I excel in unblocking friction points for your clients so they don't just use your product, they love it. That's a fun, warm, friendly statement.
Nice.
It could be stronger. It could be stronger over the next couple of sentences, offering specific metrics. But overall, it's a warm, friendly passage. I like that he references that he's got over 2 years of experience, calls out the team. I like that he calls out different formats here. So mandatory migration from an old platform, creating videos, writing help articles and guides, and I love the enthusiasm here. Ways to make that even stronger, the metrics that I mentioned, personalizing this to the actual company. Why I'm excited about this company in particular, why my experience is relevant and makes me a great asset for this particular company. So some modest things there, some simple ways to beef this up. Lastly, I'll go back to the justified, like making this overall justified, because because of the tone of this, maybe there's an argument to say that the left justified feels a little bit more like a letter.
Yeah.
And that's where I'd say, do the indent right now. I don't love this line where it goes from with over 2 years, and then there's this giant gap right to the next line, team password. It almost feels like those paragraphs should have some spacing between them. These are all nuanced things, but there's an opportunity for you to signal your level of intentionality and attention to detail here. And I use this on the last example too, of when you add metrics in, then you can draw somebody's eye to them with formatting, like bolding, italicizing, underlining, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. All right, we'll move down here. Great title here. Customer success and SEO specialist. Do we know what types of roles? You said customer support. Is that?
You focus on customer success. So.
Okay. All right. Great. Okay. Great metric in the first one, maintain sub 5-minute response times. And it is present. So this is his current job. So I like that these are present tense. That makes sense. Wrote over 50 blog posts and performed hundreds of optimizations, driving 50% year-over-year traffic increase. Phenomenal. Not really any changes there. The skills over in the left, just because it's in my line of sight right now, it's a bit text heavy. It's like hard to scan. I would try and break those out where they're formatted in a more scannable way.
Yeah.
What we said on the last resume too is look at the job posting, the job description you're applying for. Make sure any experience that you have that is listed, the keywords are listed in that job description. Make sure you're embedding those in the skills section or in these descriptions.
I think with
all right, scrolling down to the next one.
I was just gonna say, since he's got a pretty significant amount of like tech stack here, or number of tools in his tech stack. I would break it out further. There's some room here to have just a separate tech stack block, which I guess is just personal preference, but I think it would look good to be separate.
Yep, definitely. That's an easy thing to do. I like that he has certifications that are relevant to the role that he's in. So certifications, they're valuable to the extent that they enhance the signal you're sending. Like if he had real estate license, it's like, well, is that going to really apply to this particular role?
Yeah.
It tells me a little bit more about you as a person, but how is it going to help you perform this job other than maybe it was just generally valuable experience, maybe, interacting with customers. But these are all highly relevant certifications for the role that he's already in. They're maybe not as relevant for, maybe not all of them, like the SEO, Google Analytics, maybe are not as relevant for customer support roles. Maybe they are depending on the company and what the actual job description is. You can base that on that. The intercom conversational support expert, that's probably the most relevant one for customer support. Maybe reorder that, put that one at the top.
Question for you. If somebody's younger, much younger, early experience, you may have lost me. Okay. If somebody's much younger, has not a lot of experience, is it better for them to include maybe a little bit more extra to like show that they've like done a wide variety? Like, let's say, like, take the real estate. Like, let's say they're at 18, like they ended up pursuing that. They're looking to get into tech. They don't have a ton of relevant experience, so they want to add a little bit more of their experience. Would you say it's more helpful to include it if you don't have as much to play with? Did you lose me for a second?
So, I got you. So yes and no. If you're just starting out, you don't have a ton of experience, you should include the experience that you have, and you should contextualize it to help make it easier to translate why those experiences were valuable in the pursuit of this next thing. The more experience you have, the less, the more relevant experience you have, the more relevant your overall profile, resume, CV should be. So this is a good example. You're 10 years into your career. You should not have your high school on there. like argument to be made whether you even should have your degree, like college degree on there if you went to college. You're so far beyond that being a valuable thing in the role that you're doing. But, example here, he's got barista trainer on here. That's probably relevant and useful here because it's still, I'm building an overall composite of this candidate over, a time frame. It shows me his history of professional work experience. Let's just say that somebody's applying for VP level jobs. Barista trainer should not be on their CV. They should have 10, 15 years of relevant experience. All of those things are highly contextual and useful and directly transferable to the role. Earlier on in your career, though, what you're trying to do is shape this narrative about these sort of disparate experiences. And even though they may not seem like they're directly relevant, I'm going to tell you how some of the value that I got from those experiences maps onto this new experience. The expectation for most entry-level jobs is that, like, most people don't have relevant experience. I know a lot of job descriptions will sometimes say for entry-level roles, silly things like 3 to 5 years prior experience. But people who already have 3 to 5 years of entry-level experience typically are not applying for entry-level jobs.
Yeah.
You know who are getting entry-level jobs? People who they're entry-level. They're entering this professional context for the first time. So there's already this sort of expectation that we're going to have to translate or interpret what you have and how it's useful. So you should make that as easy as possible on the hiring manager, the recruiter. Even if your jobs are not directly transferable, call out the things that are relevant. Or, the signal you're sending sometimes is not going to even be relevant. It's not going to be like, this skill maps onto this job, like the skill that you need in this job. Sometimes what you're trying to do is create a really strong signal about the type of person or type of employee you are, rather than, let's say, hiring for a sales job. I read your resume and I have no indication that you are a salesperson. But what I read is, here's a young, hungry young professional who's like eager to hustle. And every role that they've had, they've crushed it in. They worked at Chick-fil-A. They worked at a grocery store. They worked as an intern in an office. But like all of the things that they had, they crushed it. They've gone out and they've done some other interesting things. They have this interesting story. Each one of those descriptions are talking about how they hustled. They've got enthusiasm on the phone. They're very quick to reply. Like sometimes the signal you're sending is a lot more valuable with the intangibles you're communicating than the specifics. And that tends to be truer earlier on in your career, and it's less true the farther along in your career, where the expectation is the importance of relevant experience is exponentially higher the farther up the food chain you move in your career. So at the start, you're trading with different currency, if you will. It's my soft skills, my enthusiasm, my desire to learn. This is where value propositions and like over personalization can really set you apart, because chances are you are applying for a job in a pool with a bunch of other people who also don't have a ton of directly relevant experience. How are you going to stand out? How are you going to stand out in that, in that pool? Well, you win on the margin. You signal the things that at least show, hey, I may not be the most experienced in this particular role, but I'm somebody who can quickly learn. And I'm somebody that you would be excited to train and help guide and help mentor to be successful. So that's, especially important part of the signal you're sending. I think that part is also often overlooked. These are good. These job descriptions are good here. You could add some metrics again to really beef these up overall, but like overall, pretty good. I think the formatting is the biggest area for improvement. Beefing up those descriptions, making better use of your space, making sure that the keywords are relevant and all included. The color scheme, things like that. Like a lot of small marginal improvements, but overall, it's a pretty good starting point. Well done, Noah.
I want to know some of the banter. And banter. I want to know it.
And banter. Yeah.
All right, let's jump over to this last one here. And for context, this is a like very entry level. This is Gracie's resume. Brand new, like just kind of starting out her career journey. So like this is a good one, especially for people that are like in a similar position. Like not even like your pre-career in some ways, right? So like you're trying to get started. Like this is a good one to take a look at.
Yeah, I think this is a great example based on what we were just talking about, where you're trying to win on the margin.
Yeah.
So it's maybe not all about the directly relevant experience you have, but it's the sort of composite signal you're sending about, the soft skills you have, your willingness and desire to learn, your eagerness, enthusiasm for this particular company and role. One of the easiest things you can do at this level, especially if you're applying for just like bare minimum entry level wage jobs with a resume like this, is personalize it. Personalize the resume, the color scheme, the about me description, or even write another section. Include the company and job title in the resume somewhere, like where it looks like you created this specifically for that company.
Yeah.
Like all of these little things are going to already make you stand out for those roles. At first look, knowing that there's not a ton of work experience here, I actually like the visual use of space here, where this sort of like wavy lines sort of box in, and the way that the text is filling the space in a nice sort of fashion. I can already tell without zooming in though that we don't have enough description about those roles.
Yeah.
That would be my immediate thing here. Without reading the about me or zooming in here, I would say that you want to have that about me signaling some of those soft skills, but also enthusiasm for the types of role, if not the specific company and role. You want to tell a story that translates for the person reading this, why these experiences that you do have are actually useful, and how they can be valuable applied to this new role that you're applying for. So that's what I would expect for this to be really high quality. Without zooming in anymore, what I will say is that the left column, the black on the dark blue, does not do it for me. It's too dark. It's hard to scan.
Yeah.
I don't generally like white font at all on resumes, but you could make this white. I would probably say either lighten up the color there or do it inverted, where that's a light background and then you've got dark text on it. But I wouldn't use dark font on a dark background. Okay. That's sort of the formatting thing.
Okay.
Let's zoom in.
Let's zoom into the about myself. Whoa. Computer's having a little...
All right. This about me, I would make relevant to the types of roles. I don't like that it's sort of a passive voice right out of the gates, like I have always been. You want this to be active. You want it to be sort of an exciting thing. If you're gonna use this first person sort of narrative style, Noah's that we just reviewed is a great example, where it says like, "Hi there, I'm Noah." Like it's this really snappy, warm, inviting opener. So there's kind of these two ends of the spectrum. There's that like really warm personal approach where it's narrative, first person, or there's the sort of objective summary where it's like cold, hard facts about why I'm good.
Yeah.
I would say it's more appropriate earlier in your career to probably err on the side of that warm, friendly introduction, because you don't have as much specific data or results to reflect on. But contextualize this to the types of roles. So, hi, I'm Gracie, and I'm super excited about breaking into XYZ thing. Over the past handful of years, even though I've got limited work experience over the past handful of years, here's how I've made the most, gotten the most value out of my time working in XYZ thing. I've got some experience doing thing, blah, 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 blah. And I'm really excited to take that experience and my eagerness to learn, my great attitude, and my unmatched work ethic to be an asset at XYZ company and XYZ role. So like, again, this is very friendly. To some degree, it's generic, but you don't have a ton of specific experience to reference. So you can kind of lean on that, warm, inviting tone. Again, we've talked about this, like
Sorry, it's
past
not.
tense,
It's
action verbs, descriptive, metrics, or it's a PNG file too, so it should be PDF.
Yeah.
That's another thing here. Like you want it to be, the naming conventions on the file. You want it to be PDF. That's just sort of the universally acceptable and expected resume type, which is probably a design file. It looks like maybe it was made in some type of tailored design file. And so if you are going to, I typically do not recommend doing that unless you're applying for design jobs. I know Gracie's sort of longer term aspiring to do that. So that's useful to get the experience. What I would say is if you are going to design your own resume, make sure that the buckets of text and the sections, like all of that flows. I don't like right now that you've got this line of about myself here, and then you've got my contact here. It's a next level. And then you've got work experience, and you've got skills, and it's sort of stair-stepped. It doesn't feel like balanced and like cohesive. I do like that it's justified up in the top paragraph. That's well done there. If you look over here under my contact, which I don't think it should say my contact, it should say contact information. That header should be smaller as a percentage of the text below it. If you just look straight down, so my contact is over here. Phone looks like it's almost aligned, and then email looks like it's offset just a little bit. They're not in a perfect line as you scan down the page. And then underneath email, her actual email address is also offset a little bit. That should be a perfectly sharp margin all the way down the page.
Yeah.
Just skipping back down to the next section too, with the bullet points. Skills should all of this, my contact information, skills, references, perfect margin all the way down. Those bullets should be perfectly aligned under skills. Right now, those bullets bleed out a little bit to the left of skills. It's, the way you're visually looking at this page, it's zigzagging. You don't want that. You want a clean scan. Then the spacing between the bullets and the words should not be so wide. It's too much. It's too much of a tab there. You want those to be scannable. You don't want, like, Spanish and her email address are both almost bleeding over the margin of the blue. And then the text in the white section, all of it's too close to the blue. And so it's really condensed down in the middle. It's sort of, as you zoom in on this, it's just all too compressed right there in the middle from a visual aesthetic standpoint. Again, I'm talking about like such silly, overly critical things, but as the recurring motif here has been that nailing the simple stuff is what nailing all of the simple stuff compounded is what really gives you an opportunity to win on the margins.
What do you think? Sorry, I thought I was going to scan it. What do you think about the email? Do you think she could afford to make a new email and drop the 2005, or do you think it's fine?
Arguments for either or. I tend to think that no numbers, just name is better. It's one of those marginal things again. Like, that's not going to keep you from getting the job, but with the numbers is less strong than just the name. So one thing to keep in mind here. All right, let's scroll down here.
Okay, bear with me. Okay, it's working fine.
References, we talked about this in the past. What capacity, where, which experience, which one of these experiences that you've listed here do these references correspond to? Even though we've got leader, mentor, and past teacher all listed there, like where, when. Education for hourly wage jobs, the types of jobs teenagers are applying to, high school graduate is fine. I would say beyond that, don't have your high school listed. All right, all of the bullets points there we've talked about. You want past tense, action verbs, you want metrics, you want some description, not just these little short these short one-liners. You want actual descriptions, preferably in that sentence form, past tense, action, verb with the metric included. So that's how I would, those are some of the things that I do to improve this. Overall, though, pretty great start for the level of experience.
This might be very specific to this one, but I think I just looked it up to verify. I think this is like the Dominican Republic like number format, like this plus 849. So it might just be a stronger approach to just include email here for these people. So that if you're applying to U.S. jobs or Canadian jobs or whatever, like it's just, I'm sure they might be able to call them, but it might be a little bit easier just to do email contact here. That's a small thing, but
yeah, that's a great one. I didn't catch that. That's a good catch. All right, I'm good on this.
Yeah,
these are this is a great sample of 3 resumes. Well done, everybody. Thanks for sharing. Thanks for hopefully that didn't come across too critical, but I think make some of those improvements in all of these resumes. There's a margin for improvement. They're already off to a great spot for the types of roles you're applying for, but some of these simple things compounded out, move you up from like a C plus, B plus to like, an A minus, A plus. Not going to be the things that get you the job, but they're certainly not going to hurt you if you make some of these improvements. They'll overall like put you in a better position, in my opinion.
Yep. All right.
Awesome. Thanks again for joining us. This is fun. We went an hour and 5 minutes breaking down resumes. Hopefully this was useful. If you found this useful, leave us a comment below. Send us an email, playbook@discoverpraxis.com. You want us to do a live resume review or cover letter review or something like this, shoot us an email. We'd be happy to consider it. I will throw the caveat out that we're only going to extend that offer for entry-level roles. We are not interested in, the purpose of this podcast is focused on entry-level, young career professionals, people at the start of their career. That's our wheelhouse. So that's where, we're going to have the most value to offer. So you like this episode, leave us a comment, like the episode, leave us a 5-star review, smash the subscribe button.
Let's go.
Let us know how we're doing. And as always, thanks for listening.